welcome to Connected episode 207. It is made possible this week by our sponsors, Casper, Pingdom, and Green Chef. I'm your host, Stephen Hack, and I'm joined again by the two co-hosts of Connected. We're all back together 2 weeks in a row. Up first, we have Federico Vitici.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm glad you're here. And we have Myke Hurley.
It's a new day. Here we are.
It's a new day. It's a new. That's a song, right? That's totally.
Yeah, I'm feeling good.
Yeah. Well, we need to clarify something before we do the show. People were worried about me. Someone even thought that I was drunk on the show.
Well, no, I don't think they thought you were drunk. They thought you were hungover.
Oh, okay, yeah, hungover.
It's just slightly
okay,
different, you know.
Yeah, but I just had a cold. I don't know if you can still feel the last bits of the cold, which is basically gone at this point. I'm doing much better, but it was just a cold. I don't drink before podcasts. That's not professional, you know. And especially,
I think you did one time.
Did I?
If I cast my memory back, I am very confident there was an episode of at least the prompt where you were drinking wine.
I was drinking wine, but I was not drunk. That's different. Also,
but this is one of those things where it's like you were also a little bit looser than usual. I remember this. I don't know what episode it was, and I probably will never find it. But there was an episode where you were drinking wine and you were having a little bit of a holiday party, I think.
Well, even if I was a hangover, you wouldn't know because you wouldn't notice. I'm very professional like that with my drinking.
You are.
So,
yep.
Maybe I've done many episodes of Connected, and I was hungover, and you didn't know. But
you would never know.
Last week I just had a cold. So thank you for warning about me, but I'm fine, I think. Yeah. Moving on. Can we do follow up?
Okay. I'm glad you're okay.
No, thank you.
Last week we were speaking about that Aqua screenshot library I put together, and we talked about how I wanted
the world famous, internet famous Aqua screenshot library.
Yeah, it's done many hundreds of thousands of page views.
I knew you before your Aqua screenshot library, so don't forget about us.
I knew Aqua before it became famous. Do you feel? I will ask you because I'll just say this has been linked all over the web this week. It's like when you look back at it, it's like this is one of those perfect little things that when a big website needs a link for the day, it's like perfect food for that, right? Because it was on like Lifehacker and stuff, where it's like they need something interesting to link to today, and someone had found this, and they're like, "This is perfect." You know, like it's one of those. It's like candy for these bigger websites, which I think is probably why it's getting linked to everywhere and doing hundreds of thousands of page views. Right? It's in hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, this is perfect for that. Which is the same as the desktop wallpapers. Same idea, right? Like
exactly
these things are very interesting to nerds, so. Big websites find them, they find them interesting, and then they put it in their like selection to link to later on, which is great. Does the fact that it has done hundreds and thousands of page views now in like a week make it feel like it was worth the time investment to you?
Yeah. Since it was so well received, and I haven't gotten to all of them, but I have a bunch of emails and tweets from people like sharing like, oh, I forgot about this. Oh, I ran this on my first computer. Like people are like genuinely like connecting with it, which is what I wanted. But I mean, we've all done this, right? You just never know if it's actually going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a good pun. I liked your pun.
Oh yeah, the connected thing. That's good.
You know what I haven't actually done yet is look through Tiger, which was my first version.
You should do
I'm flicking through it now. I haven't even thought about that. Look at these icons. Oh, iTunes was green.
Yeah, the iTunes icon has changed a bunch over the years.
Oh, wow. Gosh, but, brush metal. I always forget about it until I see it, and then I'm like, oh god, there it is.
I always
Mail
get
is
confused.
real ugly in Tiger too.
I always get confused between Cheetah and the other with the name that's like a shoe brand. Puma. Yeah, I always get which came first? Cheetah. Cheetah was the first one, right?
Yes, I'm loading it now. I've looked at it too much. I don't actually know. Yes, Cheetah was 10.0. Puma was 10.1.
10.1. Okay. Yeah.
Why is the calculator made out of metal?
Why isn't it?
Why shouldn't it be?
I feel
Everything's
like
made of metal.
that it would like you press the buttons and they would like maybe scratch a little bit. You know, you wouldn't.
It makes it really
that.
heavy. Like it feels good in the
Heavy
hand.
calculator.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so it's done well, which is really exciting.
You chose "Songs of Innocence" as the album.
I did.
That's very good. That's very good. I'm ruining all your Easter eggs now.
That's probably the biggest Easter egg, honestly.
Yeah, that's very good. No. The best Easter egg is you in the
Photo booth or FaceTime.
In FaceTime.
FaceTime. That's the best. There are some incredible pictures. I haven't looked at any release in as much depth as I'm looking at this one, where I'm looking at every image. So now I'm noticing all of the things. I've kind of just like perused through, you know, but now I'm looking at like keyboard and mouse preferences, which I wouldn't necessarily look at. But here I am now going through all of this. And it's funny because I probably looked at all of this, right? Because I was so interested in that. Probably like my first Mac, I was more interested in than any other computer, right? Like I wanted to look at everything and see what everything did because I was new to it, right? So I would go in and I probably would have spent a little bit of time in like date and time system preferences for whatever reason, just like, what is this, what's in here? So yeah, this is nice. I'm pleased that you did this project, and I'm very, very happy that it's getting a lot of attention. But you do have some things that you're working on with it though, right?
I do. So we mentioned last week I wanted to have the inclusion of a page where you could compare a single image across all of its releases. So like, what did like the main screen and system preferences look from the public beta all the way through High Sierra? Which
is a super important thing for the project, right? Like it makes sense for like if people are looking at this for historical purposes, which they ultimately will end up doing, that you would want to be like, what happened to calendar all the way across? Like that's important to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had an example of that in the blog post, but I hand-built that gallery, and I needed a way to do this programmatically because with 1,500 screenshots,
it's not possible.
It was already a lot of work to do what's up there now. And in starting to build those manually, like very quickly, it was out of hand. And so I just said on the show, if anyone is WordPress dev and maybe knows how I could do this, get in touch. And a couple people emailed me, but I owe a big thanks to Warren Harding, not the dead president, turns out. He's a really nice guy in Australia.
I was really excited for a second there.
Yeah, he's not dead. He's just been learning PHP all these years.
Maybe he should have been dead.
Yeah. Please email Federico directly about that comment.
PHP is a fate worse than death.
Just saying.
So Warren has built me a tool to do this, and I hope to get this rolled out in conjunction with the Mojave screenshots coming up. But it's working in beta, and it does what I want it to do. So I know Warren's a listener, so thank you again. Thank you to everyone who emailed and I talked with. Warren picked up the ball and ran with it, and it's really great. And I'm excited to roll it out. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be sure to talk about it here. And it's really it's going to be cool. So I'm going to have it as a single page where you can go in and compare screenshots, select the one you want, and look through all the releases. But I got some metadata stuff to deal with to get it all to work. So
I really like how you say that name, by the way.
What?
Warren.
Yeah, it's just one long letter.
It's just one sound. It's just a sound. Like I guess I would say Warren, right? Like
I can't do that.
Warren.
Warren Harding.
Thanks, Warren.
Thank you, Warren. Warren, I'm expecting Warren is very happy right now. We apologize.
I mean, he's
for
alive, so he must be happy.
Yeah, and learning PHP.
Oh boy.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to the library updates. I've played around with the exclusive beta, and I'm pleased that you're taking steps to improve. Because I mean, we're of course we're joking about PHP, but the fact that for historical purposes people are going to use this a resource, which is a horrible word, but it is what it is. And several years from now, if you keep it up to date, people will use it, and it will become like a destination when you're searching for what's the name of that website that used to exist? Sort of had a thing similar to yours, but I don't think it's updated anymore. I don't think the website still exists.
There was like GUI library for a while.
Yeah, I'm thinking of guidebook, but with the logo was like GUI, something like that.
Yeah. You're right. That's what it is.
So if you can sort of turn your screenshot library into this sort of modern version of that, I think that will be great. So I'm really happy that you're continuing to update it, and I was really happy to see it linked in a bunch of places. I have to apologize to you, Steven, though, that I didn't look on Italian websites because I really don't follow them. So you may have been linked on a bunch of Italian blogs, but I wouldn't know because I don't read them.
I think it was on Sunday. One of the big referrals was a couple of websites in Russia, which was exciting. Mm-hmm. I tried reading them with Google Translate, and it struggled, but they seemed to.
We could have had a Frederick Tendrils moment with you.
Yeah. They seemed happy with it in Russian, so it's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear they're happy with the Americans lately. So.
Swiftly moving on. Thank you to everybody who has become a Relay FM member. We will be releasing our member special on September the 4th, and we are going to be talking about the wonderful movie, The Pirates of Silicon Valley, so you can tune in to hear what I think is going to be pretty varied reviews from all of us, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that you will also hear, because we are actually recording that today, so this is why I'm talking about it like I don't know what's happened yet, because I don't. I'm hoping that Stephen will be able to provide some historical context and an accuracy rating for the movie itself. So you can sign up now. There's a link in the show notes where you can sign up to give $5 a month to Connected, which we'd greatly appreciate. But if you want to find out more about Relay FM membership, or maybe donate to another show or all the great shows, go to relay.fm/membership to learn more.
Last week we mentioned the app Opener, and I think this was in context of opening a Twitter link in Tweetbot. Was that what we were trying to do?
It was to open a Twitter link in the Twitter app, right? So, because in Twitterific and Tweetbot now, you can no longer find out who liked a tweet or whatever, right?
That's right.
So this is a way that if you open in the share extension the link to the tweet, you can then have it automatically default to open in Twitter or any other app that you choose.
So do we actually need Opener for this? We had some feedback that maybe you could do it other ways.
Well, yeah, we got an email or a tweet. I think it was a tweet about the fact that there's in the Twitter, in the Tweetbot app or in the Twitter app, there's a open in Safari sort of activity item as an action extension, but it's not really an action extension because it's not available in other apps. Still, the idea that you can open in Safari from Tweetbot, and by doing that, you will be redirected to the Twitter app because iOS uses universal links. So instead of opening the link in Safari, you will be taken into the Twitter app because the system sees the twitter.com link and it says, well, you have the Twitter app installed, so instead of opening Safari in a web view, I will take you to that tweet inside of the native client. That seems to be working for some people, but speaking from personal experience, this is an unreliable solution. Sometimes
it is so random.
It seems so random that sometimes I open a link, and this happens with Twitter, this happens with YouTube, it happens with Safari View Controller sometimes, other times it doesn't. But universal links, as much as I kind of like the concept of the link is tied to a page inside of a native app, the implementation in iOS so far has been unreliable for me. I don't know what the issue is. I don't know if something perhaps changed since universal links were introduced with iOS 9. That would be 3 years ago, 4 releases ago. But I prefer to use Opener because it always works and I know what I'm doing. So it's an extra tap. Actually not if you're using auto open, which I described last week, but yes, you would need to have Opener installed. But in my experience, using Opener is much more reliable than sort of the lottery of universal links. And also, it allows you to open links in many other third-party alternatives, not just the official clients. So back in the day when ProTube was available, the excellent YouTube client that is not available anymore, I use Opener to open YouTube links in ProTube, and that was amazing. But I still use Opener for a bunch of other types of links, including, Tweetbot and Twitterific, for example, are options that universal links that do not support. So these may work for you or may not. If it doesn't, I seriously recommend trying out Opener.
Yeah, I've been very happy with it. I like it a lot. It's a great little app. And it's good to set up with other things, right? So, as you're saying, like YouTube and stuff like that, because if YouTube opens in Safari View Controller, it's never signed in anymore, right? So then I have that whole problem, and then I try and sign in, and then it opens the YouTube app, and I'm not where I want to be because like I see a video and I add it to my watch later queue or whatever, and it's just it just doesn't work the way I want it to. So with Opener, I don't have to worry about all that stuff because it can just pass the URLs over to the application and open it where I need. So I understand. Yes, it would be wonderful if universal linking did this accurately, and if it does for you, then awesome. But I have found that is not the case. So that's why I am enjoying the use of Opener very much in our post-API destruction world. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Casper. Say goodbye to summer by taking advantage of Casper's limited-time Labor Day offer. Casper's expert team of engineers and designers research, prototype, and test their mattresses to meet the needs of all kinds of sleepers whilst providing all of the right support in all of the right places. So you may ask, what goes into making a Casper mattress so dang comfortable? Well, all Casper mattresses use premium foams to relieve pressure and help align your body so you can fall asleep easy and wake up feeling refreshed. You can be sure of your purchase of Casper's 100-night risk-free sleep-on-it trial. They deliver directly to your door, and if you don't love it for any reason, they have a hassle-free return policy. Now, Mr. Stephen Hackett, I know that you have not taken advantage of that hassle-free return policy because I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you love your Casper mattress.
I do. Something I think about a lot in the summer is it's just hot and humid here, right? Like you have a ceiling fan, you have air conditioning, but if you have a mattress where you sort of sink down into it, it gets like hot to sleep in, and that's just uncomfortable and kind of gross. And the Casper mattress is great in the summer because it's got that right balance, and so it's comfortable, but I'm not like being swallowed into it to be all hot and sweaty at night.
Nice.
It's much more comfortable than other mattresses we have owned in the past.
For a limited time, visit casper.com/savings and you can get 10% off any order of a mattress. So this special offer is until September the 3rd, 2018. So act right now. Terms and conditions apply. That is casper.com/savings to get 10% off any order of a mattress until September the 3rd. Our thanks to Casper for their support of this show and Relay FM.
All right, so there is a update out today for the application Due, D-U-E. All these apps have names that when I say them, they all sound the same.
It's not called do, like do something. It's do.
Do.
Right? Can you say that again, Steven? What's the name?
They all sound the same. Do. That's D-O-D-U-E and D-E-W. They all sound the same.
Don't forget Teux, T-E-U-X-D-E-U-X. That's my favorite.
That's
of
the
all
French
the
one. Tada. Is that how you say it?
Tada, I think it's how it's pronounced.
Tada.
Tada. I can't remember what it's called, but what is it called? Like, is it the title of a web page? Like you can hover over the top and see it has like the name. You know what I'm talking about? The little description in the web page. I'm trying to think. All right, so yeah, so when Stephen, you might be able to help me here. When we click the bookmark clip that adds a link to the CMS,
yes,
and it pre-fills that field that says title, what is that called on a website?
I don't know. Let me see.
Whatever. But okay, the reason I'm saying this is that in trying to add the Teux Dieu website to the show notes, their description is Teux Dieu. What do you have Teux Dieu today? Which I think is friggin' hilarious. Check the show notes. It will be in there. I think that they very much lean into their silly branding, which I like very much. But what is it called? Like you can get...
It's like the page title?
Yeah, the webpage title.
Yeah.
Well,
Right? That's what I said, but everyone laughed at me.
How does... Oh, so that you were just trying to describe where you see the joke.
Yeah, because it's not... You can't...
The name of the thing was not the joke itself.
No.
Okay, now I get
The
it.
joke...
Okay.
It's like, what is
Right?
happening?
I had to describe where you see the joke,
Okay,
and then I could say the joke.
I thought
Right?
the name of the place where you see the joke was the joke.
No.
Yeah, so did
Okay. Oh, all right. So that's two of us.
Now we've cleared that up.
That's all definitely
Let me
staying
talk
in, by
about.
the way.
Let me talk about. Of course it is. I wanted to. Let me talk about Dew, which is one of my very, very favorite iOS apps, and I've been using this beta for a few months now. I
And you really
and
like
I
it?
really love it. I do. I love it very, very much. And the reason so, Dew is an application which I mostly use for like quick reminders or repeating tasks that don't feel worthy of going into my task manager. So this could be stuff
Remember,
like,
so not in Remember the Milk.
no, because there's no milk. Well, actually, do you know what? If I do need to remember milk, it goes in here. So, like, if I need to buy milk, it goes in here. Because stuff like buy milk, in my opinion, should not be going into your task manager because that's just...
But what if your task manager is Remember the Milk and you have a task in that manager called Remember the Milk?
Then you've made a bad decision. You've already made a bad decision, though, if you're using that. So I don't trust any of the choices that somebody could make if they were using Remember the Milk. There is a reason we're not doing the iPhone home screen episode this year, and that is part of it.
I'm
so
hiding.
stuff like take out trash, like buy groceries, or do your exercises, take your pills, those kinds of things that you may need to do every day and have to be done. And
Yes.
one of the best features of Dew is the fact that it will keep reminding you on an interval of an item until it is marked completed. And this isn't something that a lot of applications will do. It will just keep reminding you. And it was a little while ago they added in some features to snooze to snooze the action from the reminder, just from a very simple list of options that you have. But my very favorite feature about Dew 3.0 is taking advantage of some notification changes that were made, I think, in iOS 11, where now you can, instead of just taking the notification and saying, remind me in a preset time, like 10 minutes or 30 minutes, and then it goes away and then comes back again in 10 minutes or 30 minutes. You can now tap on it and you can press a button to custom snooze for as long as you want. You can just keep tapping these intervals. So you could be like 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, save, and then it will remind you in 3 hours. You kind of have to see this to understand what I mean, and there's a link to the Mac Stories review in our show notes. But what this does is it means that I get those notifications, and instead of me just saying like a preset time for it to remind me again, I can tell it exactly when I want it to remind me again. It is a wonderful, wonderful update to the application. This is a really excellent feature. It also has haptic feedback and a pure black theme for OLED phones, but the custom snooze stuff is really wonderful. And I haven't seen it implemented in any app like the way it's done here. It's that basically they're creating like a custom keyboard. Is that right, Federico? Like for that, it's almost like a keyboard as opposed to just preset options.
It looks like a keyboard, but it's actually
Yeah.
a custom view that you can load below the content of a notification. I think that's what's happening here.
And
because of course
there aren't many apps that I've seen that do stuff like this.
No, it's actually really clever. It has to be. I think I've seen only one other instance of a developer using this API. It's perfect for Dew because it sort of retains the context of these custom snooze times that you create in the app. You can bring them over to the notification. I'm not sure if it's like a separate view controller or if they're doing something to sort of hack into the like a custom key, but it's not a custom keyboard because you need to enable a custom keyboard first. So they're showing a custom UI at the bottom of the notification, and this is super clever. Yeah, this is a perfect use of the notification content APIs that they introduced with iOS 10 and iOS 11. So I'm impressed. I mean, the first time you showed me a screenshot of the beta, I was really surprised because it's not something that you see every day, and most people probably wouldn't care. But as someone who obsesses over these little APIs that you are also forced to, well, not forced, but you, Myke, had to read this stuff last year. You were not forced. You're not forced. You were,
for some of that stuff, I was forced. I felt like.
But I'm always happy to see developers taking advantage of all the little possibilities that iOS offers. So, looks really cool.
It is worth noting that Dew is a paid app, and the two features, the black theme and the custom snoozing, are an in-app purchase for existing customers. So you have to pay $2.99 to get that, but it's worth it in my opinion. It's well worth those features. If you use the application with any kind of frequency, you should upgrade. Trust me, it's worth it. So it's a great app. I love it. So that was an app. That's an app that we expect to be updated, right? I think Dew has been in. It's been an app that's had updates and it's taken care of, and we know that it exists, and so we expect it to be updated. However, something else got updated yesterday that literally nobody, not one person, would have expected would have happened. The Airport Express. Do you remember that product? The product Apple explicitly doesn't sell anymore and stopped selling like a good few months ago. Got updated to support AirPlay 2.
No, I gotta say, shout out to Zach Hall from 9 to 5 Mac. He actually expected this. He has been tweeting screenshots because there was it looked like a bug since the iOS 11.4 beta, but the Home app showed you like an Airport Express icon as a device that you could add to HomeKit.
Well, let me rephrase what I'm saying is my expectation. When they got rid of the product and announced that AirPlay 2 was existing, I don't think anybody expected at that point that the Airport Express, once it stopped being sold, would ever get it, right? Like there may have been breadcrumbs which could have said it afterwards, but I can't imagine anyone would have really expected that.
Not really. Yeah, it's so strange to me, and I actually tweeted this morning that it was strange to me to see a discontinued product get such a major upgrade, because we're talking about AirPlay 2, one of the key features of the iOS 11 release cycle. Some people said, yeah, it's totally surprising, it doesn't really make sense. Other people said it's more, I'm not surprised because it's sort of like a goodwill gesture from Apple saying, we know we discontinued this product, so here, get this one last feature as a thank you, please forgive us.
But the funny thing though is the Airport Express is now more desirable as a product for me to own.
So it doesn't
which
really
makes
make
it
sense.
the weirdest thing. Like I now am more inclined to want to own one because then I would be able to turn any speakers into AirPlay 2 speakers.
Well, you can get one. You get one on Amazon pretty cheap still, or eBay still pretty cheap. Gray market hasn't caught on yet. I actually bought one when they announced they were going away because I thought this is something that I should have. This is super cool because these Airport Expresses, like their whole deal was like you could extend your wireless or you could put a printer somewhere. But what a lot of people use these specifically for was to stream music from iTunes to like their home speaker system, and a bunch of people did that for a really long time, and now those users have a modern way to do that, without having to go out and buy something else. And I had always sort of secretly hoped that Apple was going to do something with AirPlay 2 to make it make anything an AirPlay 2 speaker, because the HomePod doesn't have an output, and I was afraid they were just going to say, well, the answer is get rid of your stereo and buy a HomePod or 6 if you're Federico. But this is a nice way to go about it. So, I think if you're in the market, get one before the price goes up on eBay, because my guess is they will climb in price now. They're like between $40 and $50 right now, it looks like.
Yeah, it's about what it is here too.
I looked on Amazon Italy last night, just out of curiosity. And Amazon was out of stock, of course, but you could buy from third-party resellers on Amazon, and a bunch of stores had the AirPlay 2 compatible Airport Express up for €400. So, yeah,
this is that HomePod thing you've been hearing about.
Yeah. So the phone.
Yeah, there's one here, £500 on Amazon.
Holy cow.
Yeah. There you go.
Used like new for £500 and £4.59 delivery.
That's bananas. But to show how versatile this can be, Jason Snell hooked it up to an iPod Hi-Fi, which is about the best thing I've ever seen. Someone on Twitter replied to both of us and said, well, you could use... There used to be this program called Line In where you could take like audio in from a machine and make it play through its own speakers. It's like, well, what if I did Airport Express to like an old iMac and had music playing out of like an iMac G3 from Siri? I was like, yeah, you could do that too. Like this is a very... Like they should still make this thing, even if it's not... Like, so don't make the Airport Express again, but Apple should make a little AirPlay 2 receiver that you can plug into audio stuff.
HomePod Mini. It's going to be one day, it will be a product, right? Like the Google Home Mini or something, right? Or the Echo Dot. Like that's what it will be if they ever do it.
I hope so, because it just gives you so much more flexibility, and it lets you use existing equipment with the new like interface stuff, right? That you don't have to go and replace your home stereo or like the system that's wired into your living room.
Everyone already replaced their home stereos when the iPod Hi-Fi came out. Do you remember?
That's true. And then again, then they went to Sonos, and now they're on HomePods. People just want to quit. They want to quit being, jerked around.
That is one of my very favorite Steve Jobs quotes, right? When he says that he replaced his whole home audio system with the iPod Hi-Fi. It's very good.
There's no way that's actually true.
It's very good. It's very good. Millionaire, right? Can you imagine what he had? And he's like, oh, no, I'll just get one of these things. I don't believe you, Steve.
Yeah, I just put it on the curb in a cardboard box. I brought home an iPod Hi-Fi. It is cool. And I mean, props to Apple for doing this. AirPlay 2 obviously had such a struggle coming into this world, right? Like it was delayed and then it was buggy and then it was out of the betas and then they finally shipped it. And to then do the work to make it, work on an Airport Express that got updated last in like 2012 or something. Like that's like legitimately cool. And maybe this is why maybe the Airport Express support is what made AirPlay 2 late. That's probably not true. But can you imagine if it was? But I really do appreciate, I mean, it's easy to joke about this, but I really do appreciate them doing that because it gives like, this thing was cheap when it was new. It was like $100 or something. And like, they didn't have to do this, right? Like no one, to your point, no one like would be upset if this never happened except for Zach. But now that it has happened, like it's a nice thing. And I'm glad they did it.
It is. I just wanted to mention the Airport line was discontinued in April.
Well, AirPlay 2 was supposed to be out well before then. So like, AirPlay 2 could have been like the parting piece for the Airport Express. And maybe it was supposed to be. And then they couldn't make it, or they couldn't ship it in time, and then it just all sort of fell apart. And the Airport Express was last updated in June 2012. This is only on the 802.11n style, so it looks like a baby white Apple TV, where the Airport Express before that like looked like a big wall charger, like it plugged and hung from the prongs in the wall. This one, it looks like a little
I
Apple
had
TV.
that one. I had that one.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them. What do you? It's Fight. Airport Express Fight.
No thanks. Today's show is brought to you by our amazing friends at Pingdom. Pingdom are brilliant because they help keep your sites and the sites you love online because they monitor your site so you don't have to. They give you real-time feedback so you know exactly what's going on at all times. Stuff breaks on the internet every single day. There are 400,000 outages that Pingdom detects, and this is just of the websites that they're already monitoring. So can you just even imagine how many things break online every day? It doesn't matter if you're a startup, a Fortune 500 company, or a podcast network. You need alerts about any critical website issues. Pingdom will let you customize how you're alerted depending on the severity of the outage, so you can have different types of alerts for different types of outages. So there's an importance level, which is important. And they'll also track and analyze your website's load time so you can see exactly what is affecting the user experience. If you have a site of any size, you need Pingdom. They have a fuss-free approach to get started. All you need to do is give them the URL that you want to monitor, and they will take care of the rest. So go to pingdom.com/relayfm right now for a 14-day free trial just for you with no credit card required. Then when you sign up, use the code CONNECTED at checkout and you'll get a massive 30% off your first invoice. That is pingdom.com/relayfm and the code CONNECTED at checkout. Our thanks to Pingdom for their continued support of this show and Relay FM.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the Mac Mini. We promised last week that we were going to talk about reasons that we may want to purchase Mac Minis or how we use the existing ones we have. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the idea of like who is the Mac Mini customer, because we're going to talk about like the way we are going, like the way we want to use them or the way that we do. But on a sort of a broader landscape, some feedback we got.
Hang on a second. Are we doing follow-up as a topic?
It's no, it's just like a little. It's like a little follow-up icing on a topic.
Interesting.
Mac Mini got promoted from follow-up to a topic, but there's still a little follow-up DNA left in it. So,
okay,
just a couple examples. Neural Sandwich on Twitter, which I'm sure is his given name, wrote, "The Mac Mini, for me, is great if you want to have two matching monitors and not have to deal with laptop clamshell weirdness. And it doesn't cost the price of a small home," which is kind of funny. So I think I have used a laptop in clamshell before, back when I had a job. That's basically how I use my notebook all day, every day. And that can be definitely weird. Like it doesn't wake up or doesn't go to sleep correctly. Or you get home and it's been running in your bag because it woke up when you unplugged it and freaked out. And a Mac Mini is nice because you can just have it on the desk and you can have two matching displays. Right now, at least, if you want to use an external display with like something like an iMac, it's not going to match. You know, for a while, the iMac and like the LED cinema display and the Thunderbolt display, they all sort of had a similar language, and then the iMac sort of moved on and Apple didn't update the displays again. So like if this is an important factor for you, which it is for some people, then the Mac Mini kind of is the only option.
Just put stickers on everything.
Yeah, just cover it all up with there's like camouflage the borders, and you can't tell what's going on.
I wonder if D-Brand make a Mac Mini skin.
I'm sure they do. So this is like a use case.
I can confirm that they make skins. Well, yeah, skins. Well, this is Slick Wraps that I'm looking at now. They make Mac Mini skins. I don't know if D-Brand do though.
Please put those in the show notes.
They will definitely be there.
So, I don't know how big of a use case this is, but it's one if you want to use multiple monitors. The Mac Mini is sort of like the easiest way to do that doesn't involve buying a Mac Pro. Tyler wrote, which I think is interesting too. I had said that desktop switchers weren't real people anymore. Well, Tyler is one of those people. So I guess I'm weird, but if I got a Mac Mini, it would be as a switcher. I have very little desire for a notebook, but I'm tired of my desktop PC. So I think Tyler is representative of a group of people that is still out there. So maybe I was wrong to write that off completely. I do think Tyler's probably in the minority here, but there are people who like I'm a desktop person. Myke, you're a desktop person. And so, if we were going to be switching from a PC to a Mac, then maybe we would be looking at the Mac Mini if it were a viable option.
And I understand that, but like when we say things like it is an incredibly small percentage of the market, like that is categorically true because we know things like, for example, that desktops take up 20% of the Mac market, which is already a shrinking market. And I can almost definitely assure you that the majority of purchases are iMacs, because otherwise Apple would have updated the Mac Mini more than they did in the last 4 years.
I think something that goes hand in hand with that conversation is like the span of the iMac. The iMac, you can get one that's relatively inexpensive. I mean, that's different for everybody, of course, but the iMac starts at something. I'm loading the page, installing. It starts at $1,099 that does not have a Retina display, has a hard drive. But then, of course, you can go up to something like the 27-inch and spend, over $3,000. But the iMac is a very broad product, and I think one reason it sells so well is I think it's kind of like the default option because it has a display and everything, and it's sort of like the flagship of the desktop line. I think part of it is that reach where, Myke, you can edit podcasts and video on one, and then someone can buy a machine that is more or less the same computer and use it in an office and not really need any of that stuff, so they can buy a cheaper one. And the idea of a Pro Mac Mini may tap into this a little bit, where there is like a really basic entry level, but if you need to spec it up into something more powerful, you can with a broader range than the Mac Mini's ever had. That's what I'm hoping for with this new machine. So maybe they can take some of that iMac flexibility and apply it to the Mac Mini. in which case the sales may come up some if it's a more reasonable option to more people. Right now, not many people are buying them because they're old, and that means that they're slower than other Macs in the line. That's okay for some people, but for others of us, including the three of us I'm going to talk about, it's not quite enough. Lastly, I got an email from somebody. They asked to be anonymous, but they support a mixed PC and Mac environment in a big company. So they work for a corporation with an IT department, and I had not really considered this, but they have a standard like display keyboard and mouse bundle for all of their users. And then the users just get a Mac Mini, or he sent me the model number. I looked it up. It's like a small like HP desktop. It's kind of like a Mac Mini. It's like small form factor, little HP. And they basically drop in either a Mac Mini or an HP, depending if the user is getting a Mac or a PC. But the rest of the install is standard, like standard display, standard USB keyboard and mouse, standard power, like power strip and all that sort of stuff. They just drop in a different desktop, and that's not something that I had really thought about. But I think it makes sense that's sort of like the switcher roll. Like I just unplug my PC and plug in a Mac Mini. Or like I think there are use cases where the Mac Minis, like sort of universal inputs and like small form factor, make it more flexible for different types of users. And I guess this company is still buying old ones. I emailed them back, and I just last night hadn't heard anything. So I assume they're still buying just old ones. But it's I think it's kind of an interesting use case. Like the iMac is clearly not going to fit into the way they buy computers, but the Mac Mini does, so they buy them. And I think that's a use case that's worth considering as well.
So should we talk about some other use cases?
Yes. Federico, why do you want a Mac Mini?
I miss being able to organize my TV shows and movies with Plex. And I would like to have an actual Plex server that can do transcoding and, store multiple gigabytes of content on my local network. So I would use a Mac Mini as a media server for TV shows and movies for sure. But in general, speaking of encoding video, I would use the Mac Mini so that I can keep using my 2015 MacBook Pro for podcasting, and I don't have to ask Sylvia to use her 2016 MacBook Pro whenever I need to encode a video for my iOS reviews. I would love to have a Mac Mini in my house that I can connect to, that I can feed a video file and say, you need to encode this video or multiple videos at once in the background in 3 different formats, because we use on Mac Stories when we do videos inside of our stories, and especially for my iOS reviews, those videos are actually in 3 different formats depending on the browser that you use. So we use MP4, WebM, and OGG, I think, as a fallback option. And I really don't, I feel bad asking Sylvia to do this thing on her computer because it's faster than mine. I suppose that if a new Mac Mini is released, and if I max it out and it's got the new Intel chips inside, and I put in tons of RAM, and, I should be able to process like 5 or 6 small videos at once, which are not super long videos that are like 30-second snippets of, features of iOS, but still that would be really helpful. And I would be able to set up, these automations to sort of look for video files in my Dropbox and maybe use Hazel and kick off these tasks with the shell or Automator in the background. It would be fun. And also, it would be a centralized backup location for my MacBook, for Sylvia's MacBook, and especially, Sylvia, she has a lot of sort of graphic assets and other video files for her job that she needs to archive. So I would very much prefer to have a central location that is not a Synology with its terrible UI and RAID whatever means. Please don't email me. I know you love your Synology. That's fine. I'm happy for you. I want a Macintosh computer.
Also specifically Casey?
Yes,
Casey Liss?
Casey Liss.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. We're good.
Don't worry. No,
it's too late.
Good.
He's already DM'd you in Slack.
So yeah, entertainment, automation, and video encoding for screencasts that we use in our articles, and backup location for my computer, Silvia's computer, and maybe something like an off-site backup of iCloud for library, of Google Photos, that we can also keep, copies of those services offline. So 3 main use cases.
Mine are pretty similar, honestly. Like, I've been toying around. This is something I've had in the back of my mind for a while, but like, I would definitely be more keen to do it if and when Apple upgrades the Mac Mini, because the Mac Mini is the perfect machine for doing this kind of thing, where I want to have a Mac that is turned on all the time. I don't like to leave my iMac even in sleep. I turn it off every day because it's powering some USB devices that are really expensive. They're audio equipment, and I just prefer it to be off. I just prefer it. Like, again, like, I understand that many people think it's fine, and I get that, but I just prefer to not have these things on all the time, so I turn them all off every day. But I would like to have a machine which is on so it could do things like running some Hazel scripts for me. Like, it could be processing photos in my Federico Viticci created, but nobody else uses except me, Hazel scripts with the Dropbox photo thing that I have running, right? Like,
from 6 years ago.
From like 2014 or something, I don't know, but like, I'm still doing that. And I'm sure I could come up with some other stuff too, like ways for me to, especially with shortcuts. The Shortcuts app seems to have some restrictions about, and I don't think they're going to get fixed, about where it can save files. It used to be with Workflow, you could save files anywhere you wanted, right? To Dropbox or Box or iCloud Drive. But Shortcuts only allows files to be saved to the Shortcuts folder on iCloud Drive. So unless Dropbox creates their own Shortcuts actions, which don't know about that yet, but or some enterprising third party could do it, which I believe will happen.
Yeah.
But if it wouldn't, then I could have Hazel watching that folder and then moving things where they needed to go, which would work nicely. But there's always things I can do there. I also would like to have a machine that I can like VNC to from my iPad, using an app like Screens or something to perform basic tasks that I need my Mac to do. There's just some stuff that, like Federico's video encoding, that I need a Mac to be able to do. It's easier to do on a Mac, so I would have preferred to not have to turn my Mac on specifically to do that one thing. So just being able to use an app to just access that machine would be great. And also network attached storage. I don't really have anything for that, and I just am not keen on having like a Drobo set up to my iMac. But I could totally do that, right, with a Mac Mini and just attach some external storage to it, hide it away in my office somewhere, and it would just be humming away, and I could save things to it, and it would be great. So a Mac Mini would be perfect for that.
Yeah, so I've got one, and my use cases for it definitely overlap what you guys talked about. So I have a mid-2011. It's hooked up to my television. It's like an i5, 8 gigs of RAM, and I put an SSD in it like 100 years ago. It is hooked up to the TV. We use the Apple TV as like the default input, but the Mac Mini is nice for some video stuff that's not easy to get to the Apple TV because I don't have Plex. I have Plex set up, but I don't use it. And because we have kids, like there's still stuff that we watch on DVD, and so we have a USB super drive plugged into the Mac Mini, and we can watch DVDs on the television. It does host a Drobo over Thunderbolt. I would have that Drobo here in the office hooked up to the iMac, except for the noise that it makes, and my wife doesn't love that it sits where the TV sits, but it's got like 6 hard drives in it and a fan, and I basically have to like power it down anytime I record, and that seems like a lot of just back and forth, and so it's in the house, and I connect to that Mac Mini over Ethernet from the studio into the house and pull files off of it, but that is directly attached to the Mac Mini, and I like that because that means I can do file sharing, and I can back it up with Backblaze because it's directly attached to a Mac. Things that you can do with a NAS, but are a little bit trickier and can be a little more fragile.
I'm not super keen to learn how one of these things works when I know how a Mac works, right? Like, and that's one of the reasons I prefer it, right? Like, I know how a Mac works. I know how the apps that I can download work, and they're going to work with my iPad. Like, I'm sure you can do all of this stuff with a Synology, and probably more in some cases. But I'm just not really keen to learn a whole new thing. I would just like to use macOS. Yeah,
I like that the Mac just sees it as an external hard drive. Like the Mac just sees it as a drive, and you don't have to use a Drobo. You can use like a Promise RAID or Pegasus or something. There's other options out there.
Promise Raid is a very interesting name.
Yeah, is that the name of that company? They promise that your raid will work. Promise Raid.
Promise Technology.
Yeah. They make some Thunderbolt stuff. So you have some options there, but I like it just attached to the Mac because then I can just use Mac OS to manage everything. So that combination, the Mac Mini and the Drobo, do several things. I host a big family iTunes library there. There's some music in that, but my wife and I use Apple Music now, so the music is less important. But that iTunes library is set to download any movies or TV shows that we purchase, which is less and less over time, but occasionally we still do that, and then that iTunes library will grab a copy of it. That iTunes library is also subscribed to every Relay FM show, and so I download all of the MP3s we publish and have them on the Drobo, because you never know when you're going to need something.
Look at you. Have you ever?
No. But one day.
But one
day I might. One day when I build the Relay Aqua library, I'll be set. I have an application running on my Mac Mini called Printopia. So I have like this brother network printer that does not support AirPrint. So I can't print from an iOS to the printer directly. There are several different Mac apps that do this. Printopia is just the one that I use. And it basically exposes my brother printer to my iOS devices, like through the Mac. So I can print from my iPhone or iPad to my brother printer as long as the Mac Mini is up and running, which is very handy if you have an older printer or one like mine that just doesn't support AirPrint. I have Time Machine Server running from my MacBook Pro. There's a link in the show notes how to set that up. That's pretty new to Mac OS. It used to only be in Mac OS Server. And then content caching. So you can set up a Mac server, or a Mac OS server is basically dead, to cache things like software updates and like App Store updates and stuff for other machines on the network. It's a little bit involved to set up, but it's not too bad. There's a Keybase article in the show notes. And I have that running. So it downloads like a Mac OS update, and then we have my wife's got an iMac now. I've got my iMac Pro and a MacBook Pro, and it just allows those downloads to be faster. It's not, I really set that up because I wanted to play with it, but I've left it running because it's helpful. And then because I have a super drive, CD and DVD sharing to the modern Macs on the network. So occasionally I'll need to pull something off an optical disc, and I have a USB super drive in my office, but I can never seem to find it. And sometimes I just pop it in the one in the house and just share from there. So Myke and Federico, I totally agree with y'all's reasons for wanting a Mac Mini, because it is like a really versatile tool, and you can, because it's so small and it's effectively silent, you can just leave it running all the time. My Mac Mini only gets rebooted when it freaks out because it's getting older, or there's a software update for it. Other than that, it's just running all the time, and I don't interface with it directly very often. I do have a keyboard and mouse paired to it that sort of live in the entertainment center. Most of the time, I just use screen sharing from another Mac, and if I need to pull something off of it or change a setting. But most of the time, it just runs, and it hosts that Drobo and does these things for me without really much interference, and that's really what I wanted.
Yeah, I'm excited to get back into the idea of I have a server at home doing things in the background, and I can issue sort of commands from my iPad with shortcuts, which is something that I wasn't able to do back when I used to have a Mac Mini in 2012, 2013. I used to have a personal Mac Mini at Mac Mini Colo, and I didn't have workflow to do this sort of remote execution of commands. So I used to rely on these hacks and workarounds, something like saving a command, like a shell command, inside of a text file in Dropbox, and using Hazel to sort of read the contents of that file and executing the command. Crazy stuff. But with shortcuts now, I could issue like an SSH command from my iPad or from my iPhone, even from Siri, and kick off, a series of tasks at home. Do we think there will be an announcement at the September event? Where do we stand? Okay.
No.
All right.
No, I don't think there will be any Macs at September event. I actually don't even think they're going to mention Mojave in the September event.
Is it because you think there's going to be a second event in October? Or just like...
There will be a second event of some kind, I believe, either like a press event or like some briefings or just some product releases. Depends on what they're announcing. But yeah, I don't think that the Mac will get any time in the September event, because there's so... that event could just be iPhone, like nothing else, right? And you would fill an hour because they've got 3 phones at least that they're debuting. So I don't think that we're going to see it. Stephen, I want to ask you actually, do you feel that Mojave is as ready as iOS 12 is?
No, I don't.
Interesting. Because that might be another thing, right? Like maybe Mojave just isn't even coming out in September for this reason, because they're going to hold it and wait until October.
Yeah, so there've been over the last several years, Apple's done it's really hard to dictate or guess what they're going to do because they've done a bunch of different things. They have done everything in one event. They have broken out the Mac stuff separately. They've done, like you said, Mac is like press release stuff, or like, our journalist friends have new Macs and then there's an embargo and they all drop at the same time. And Mac OS has come out the same time as iOS, and it's come out later, and it just depends on where things are. And this year in particular, there's not a lot of new stuff in between iOS and Mac OS. Like when when did they upgrade to iCloud Drive, Federico? Is that iOS 8 or so?
iCloud, so yes, but it didn't have an actual app in iOS 8.
Right.
It got the app in iOS 9,
but
yeah.
Your application's upgraded to use iCloud Drive storage. The thing that was weird about that is that the Mac version, or whatever, I guess, I don't know what came out that year, but whatever version of Mac OS was that year, it was later. And so like you could upgrade to the new Notes or upgrade to like iCloud Drive storage, but then that stuff was on your Mac.
I remember that. Yeah,
remember that?
Yeah, totally.
There's nothing like that this year that, as far as I can tell, that like is really dependent on both Mac OS and iOS coming out together. So I think the Mac could totally be an October thing. I don't know if there's enough to hold a Mac event. I think they could put it in, like, iPhone keynotes take way less time than they used to. Like if you sit and actually watch the iPhone segments, they're much shorter than they used to be because the phones like just evolve less year over year, and like people already know a bunch about them, so you don't have to go like as in depth about like the camera subsystem as they used to, because the changes are smaller deltas and people kind of understand what they do. And so even if it's like iPhone, iPad, watch, like then I think that's probably like an hour and a half or 2 hours. But I
feel like you're way more likely to see iPhone. It's like it probably go like in the importance order, right? iPhone, watch, iPad, then Macs. Like I can't imagine a September event with iPhone and a Mac Mini, and then like there's an October event.
I mean, unless the Mac stuff is real short and they just use it to open the event and then they move on. So we'll see.
It's not impossible.
We'll see. I think either way is totally possible. But if it's just the Mac Mini and like spec bumped iMacs, then it may just be press release stuff. I don't know. We're way off topic now, but either way, like whatever happens, I think all three of us are interested in what a new Mac Mini would be. I would really like to replace mine at home. I would maybe replace the one that we have at Mac Stadium for live streaming, although we just put a new drive in it not too long ago, so hopefully we're good to go for a while. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think a lot of people are watching this, and I think if the three of us are any indication, there are other users like us who want to use it as a home server, an office server, and having something a little bit more powerful and maybe smaller at the same time would be nice for those people. So like I said last week, I'm genuinely excited about the possibility of a new Mac Mini. Maybe it's just been so long, but I'm pretty pumped about it.
Today's show is also brought to you by Green Chef. Green Chef is a meal delivery service that includes everything that you're going to need to cook delicious gourmet meals that you can feel good about. But Green Chef sends a wide variety of organic ingredients and imaginative new recipes every week in a way that I find super interesting, because they have meal plans for diet types. So they have meal plans that include paleo, vegan, vegetarian, keto, gluten-free, omnivore, or carnivore. You can choose whatever dietary preference you have from those, and they will put together meals and organic ingredients and ship them to you with that in mind, which is really, really awesome. And Green Chef is the first USDA certified organic meal delivery service. Every ingredient is thoughtfully sourced, and its journey is tracked from planting to plating, with recipes that include pre-made sauces, dressings, and spices, so you get more flavor in less time. Everything is hand-picked and delivered right to your door, and it's super easy to switch your meal plan and change the box you're getting whenever you want. Maybe if your dietary preferences change, or you want to try something completely new. Now, Stephen, I know that you got some Green Chef boxes, and I'm interested to know what you think.
Yeah, so we did the gluten-free options. It was nice knowing that that was how things were going to be. Sometimes when you order things, like, you've got to really pay attention to the labels and make sure that you get what you think you're going to get. I didn't have that worry with Green Chef. They're right up front on their website about, hey, we offer all these options, and that really sets them apart. So somebody who eats a modified diet, I greatly appreciated that. So we tried a couple of different meals, and everything was really easy to understand how it went together. You know, I can cook some basic stuff, but like, you get anything fancier than my level, and I start to get worried that I'm doing it wrong. I didn't have that worry with Green Chef. And the meals were great. My wife and I enjoyed them. The kids enjoyed everything we tried. We got them to try some new things, which as a parent is a huge win. And
whoa. Congratulations.
Yeah, it really is. It's a real moral victory some days to get your kids to try new foods. But Green Chef let us do that. So the Hackett family was a bunch of big fans.
For $50 off your first box of Green Chef, go to greenchef.us/connected. That is greenchef.us/connected for $50 off your first box of Green Chef. Our thanks to Green Chef for their support of Connected and Relay FM.
All right, so we've got some more iPhone rumors to round out this week.
Yay.
We're just like in it with iPhone rumors.
iPhone rumors. I like
on.
iPhone rumors. Go for it. So
I had a pretty tongue-in-cheek blog post the other day of like, these 4 iPhone rumors came out today. You know, it's like, there's so much stuff. So we're going to start with the Apple Pencil. There's been talk of maybe this is the year the Apple Pencil gets added to the iPhone. Myke, I know you and Jason have talked a lot about that on Upgrade. It makes sense when you look at the Galaxy Note line. People really like it. Maybe Apple could do something here. The new, again, for lack of knowing the real names, the iPhone 10 Plus is an enormous phone, it looks like, and it'd be great to be able to take out a pencil and do stuff with it. But it seems like that's maybe not the case after all.
Well, it looks like Apple doesn't want any of the serious business happening with the Galaxy Note. I see this gentleman walking around with a Galaxy Notes, typing in on the phone with a stylus. I assume they're all editing cells in a spreadsheet. They're looking all serious with this S Pen.
Wouldn't it be easier though? But it would be easier though, like to access Google Sheets with. I mean, that's how I find with my Apple Pencil.
Would you? So you're saying that you would like to walk around and edit spreadsheets as you're walking with the phone?
Sure.
And okay,
yeah, man.
Why not do it at a
sometimes
desk?
I have to get real business done. Because, I'm a
You're
man,
a man
on the move.
Okay.
I travel around. I'm a very important businessman.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm out on the prowl. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. And I need access to my Google Sheets. That's just how it is. Okay. What can I say?
Sure. Well, I hope that someday you will get your wish.
I want an Apple Pencil. So I want Apple Pencil support on the iPhone. Like, I want it for the same reason that I like it on my iPad. Like, the ability to write stuff down, jot stuff down, and have an additional way to access UI elements would be really important to me. Like, I love the Apple Pencil for that. There's no reason I wouldn't want it on an iPad with a vertical 6.5-inch screen, what do they call it? Diagonal 6.5-inch screen. It's going to be a really, really big screen.
It is.
Like,
it's a
I
big
would
phone.
love to have an Apple Pencil, like much smaller Apple Pencil that was designed for that purpose. Like, I think that would be really great. Like, and I know why. I know you can make fun of it, like, because the Note has always been a thing to make fun of. But over time, everything that people have made fun of about the Note has happened to iPhones, right? Getting really big and all that kind of stuff.
Except the Fire thing.
Could happen. There is absolutely no reason why that couldn't happen to Apple as well. Like, Samsung were just the unlucky ones that it happened to first.
But it hasn't yet. So I'm just saying.
There's the conversation of like the Logitech Crayon, maybe even, so like you could have one device to easily go back and forth between the phone and an iPad, as opposed to right now it's sort of paired, and you wouldn't want to be like plugging into the Lightning port every time you change devices. I think it'd be nice. I don't think it's for me. I don't use my Apple Pencil hardly at all. But for people who do like it, like, why not make it an option, right? Like, You're not bundling it like they do with the Note. It's not going to be embedded in the body. You eject it. Like, it's going to be a separate purchase because that's how Apple is. Why not give people the option at least? So Federico, you don't have to use it, but Myke, you can. Like, that seems fair to me. But it seems like it's not going to be the case. So maybe next year, Myke.
There are also rumors of production delays for the iPhone 9, so the LCD phone. Apparently, the OLED phones will be available in September, but like the iPhone 10, the LCD version might launch later on. So there might be there's clearly some kind of production issue because there's no reason why they wouldn't want to ship them all in September. But it seems like they might be having some trouble, which it kind of tracks for me, right? Because the OLED phone was super weird and new, and they had to do all that crazy stuff with this display and stuff. That I'm not surprised that there was some hiccups. And I would expect it's a similar kind of thing for the LCD one. Like, they know how to make an iPhone 10 at this point. Like, that's not an issue, right? So, like, making a new iPhone 10 and a bigger iPhone 10 probably doesn't pose significant issues for them. But this new LCD phone, again, it's, like, different in different ways. The bezels are smaller than they've been on an LCD phone before. You know, like, so it wouldn't surprise me if they announced that the iPhone 9 will be shipping a little bit later, because it kind of would track with when they announced the 10. Does that make sense?
And I could see how maybe some people will say, well, I don't want to wait for the iPhone 9. I'll just get the new iPhone 10, thus giving Apple more money.
We're not saying it's a conspiracy theory, but it sure is an interesting thing to think about.
And that is what's a little bit different this time, if this pans out. Last time it was like the high-end enthusiast phone that was late, so all of us just waited. If the 9 is the sort of the mainstream phone, which I'm not sure it was going to pan out that way.
I don't think it is. I think you could argue that even though the prices will be more, like the 10 is they're kind of positioned as the mainstream phone now, right? Like, that's going to be the kind of
default,
the middle phone in the line, right? Like the medium phone, the one for everyone, not in size but in price.
Yeah.
You know, because we've spoken about this, and there was a Mark Gurman report that seemed to clear up most of what we believe to be true, right, at this point, about like the sizes. And even in that report, it says that the 6.1-inch phone looks like it's going to have some colors, and we've spoken about that on this show, right? Like how I think risky that decision is on Apple's part to make colored versions of a phone again after the 5C.
The colors aren't why the 5C failed. It's because it was old and no one wanted it. But
right, but it's not that it's old. It's that you know that the 5C was old by looking at it, and you will know that you have the not expensive iPhone by looking at it. And like, if that's a problem, we don't know, but I hazard that it might be.
I guess we'll see. I mean, so much of the way they've done things is like turned upside down now. Like, who knows, right? So we'll see. I still have some concern that the mainstream phone is too big, but I guess we'll see how that goes. When it's the best-selling iPhone ever, then we'll know I was wrong. But right now, I feel like there are people who are going to be upset that the 4.7-inch is now no longer a flagship.
Sure, but this has been a thing that's moved over time, right? Like, the 4.7-inch phone is bigger than the phones used to be.
It is, but I wonder if this is too big. Again, we'll see. We'll see how the sales numbers pan out. While we're talking about displays, there's this interesting report by Barclays saying that the 2019 phones, so not the phones we're going to see here in a couple weeks, but the phones a year from now, will, according to this report, drop 3D touch. This echoes a report by Myke Kuo saying that 3D touch was not going to be a feature on this iPhone 9 this year, which I think he's backed off of. So what do you guys think about this? So this is based on like parts sourcing, and the parts used to like sense 3D touch have not been ordered for the next year's phones, or like those suppliers are being told that they're SOL. But that could be interpreted as, oh, they found a new way to do it that doesn't involve these parts, so maybe it's thinner and lighter. And they did that with the iPhone 10. The 3D touch subsystem in the iPhone 10 is different than previous phones. Maybe they've just been able to change and improve that again. Or if you take it as far as this report says, that 3D touch will be going away, being removed from the iPhones. I don't know which one it is, but what do you guys think about that? Federico, do you use 3D touch on your phone?
Yeah, I do. I actually do. But it depends on what which implementation of 3D Touch? So, for example, I use the Pick and Pop all the time for previews, whether I want to preview a link in a web view or I want to expand, for example, a tweet and I want to see the replies to that tweet. So the Pick and Pop system I really enjoy and I really use all the time. I don't use quick actions on the home screen as much. Mostly because I forget about them. I forget about the fact that they exist. And every time when I sort of remember and I look at those quick actions and I go like, oh, that's really useful. And then I forget again. So those haven't been able to stick for me. And
they're just inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
That some apps have really good options and then some apps just say share. It's like...
Yeah, I've also mostly found it like... not really that great, because you're pressing down and you're going to a place, but then like the app opens and then goes there. Like the implementation of how it works has never felt right to me. Like I never really feel like I'm saving any time because like I'm just watching the app do the things that I would have done to get to that point. I
have a theory that I'm going to share here, and I don't know if I don't care if it'll come true or not. This is it's a.
You can share things like this on podcasts because nobody really calls you out on it.
It's a theory. It doesn't. It's not a prediction, so I don't have to worry about the price or winning. So this is fine. I'm very relaxed in sharing this theory.
Good.
So if Apple does a redesign on the home screen and they remove 3D Touch, I could see the quick action feature going away altogether and being replaced to avoid the very issue that Myke just mentioned of I'm just watching an app navigate to a page. I could see shortcuts becoming home screen elements in that you could have shortcuts on the home screen to perform actions in the background without having to open the app or show you stuff from the app, sort of like a widget, but based on the more powerful, framework that is shortcuts. So we're going to discuss this. I don't think 3D Touch is going away, but if it does, and if it's replaced by the Shortcuts API, you know how Apple likes to introduce a framework or, a technology, and it's one thing when they launch it, and then over the next few years, they sort of reuse it for other things. And I could see...
The example, like here, NS user activity, right?
Exactly.
Becomes the building blocks of shortcuts.
Exactly. Or SiriKit. It's all these APIs that they start off as one thing and later you go, oh, now I see why you introduced this feature years ago. I could see shortcuts becoming part of a redesigned home screen. If, Gurman said several months ago that a new home screen is one of the key features of iOS 13 in 2019. So we'll see. But anyway...
I can totally see that happening. I think that is a very, very good prediction, but I don't think that 3D Touch needs to be included in that, I don't think that you have to remove, that you would do that because you remove 3D Touch or vice versa, right? Like, I feel like the 3D Touch actions on the icons, I don't think people use those really at all. I mean, again, I'm sure some people do, but like in the aggregate, I don't think that they're used by a lot of people. But I use 3D Touch every single day for all sorts of things. Peek and pop, like to look at elements, maybe I want to see a message but not have it as read yet, or I want to be able to just peek into a link. I do that all the time, right? Like I see a link and then I press down on it and then push it in if I want to actually go to the website. Like I use this stuff all the time, and I can't imagine Apple completely removing this. I don't think that this is on the money. I think that what has probably happened is that the parts have changed.
Yeah.
Right? Like the way the technology is, like the physical technology is different, and people just interpret that to mean something. But I don't think that's the case at all.
This feels like one of those analyst moves a little bit where like analysts sometimes have to swing really big because in 2 years we're not going to remember this unless they were right. Like, oh yeah, Barclays, man, way to go, 3D Touch guys. Yeah, I don't think it's going away. I think the parts have changed. I think it is interesting to talk about how Apple could change it in software, which of course no analyst has any idea of, because software, this sort of stuff only leaks when Apple puts out HomePod firmware. But I do think there's room for Apple to improve 3D Touch, and I think the home screen is the number one place. I love the idea of like exposing shortcuts via 3D Touch as opposed to the quick actions. Mm-hmm. I think if Apple is going to, like, if they're redesigning this, like if they're having new parts that make this possible, maybe we finally see it on the iPad. You know, maybe whatever's going on here with the hardware allows them to put it on a bigger screen. I don't think that would be for this year's iPads, unless we're going to have a fun surprise. But, you know, in the future, like, it's already sort of fragmented between the phone and the tablet, and that's only going to get more noticeable if developers use 3D Touch more. And maybe it's time. I mean, what do you guys think?
There's a couple of things that I want to share about the arguments against 3D Touch and sort of in favor of 3D Touch, if that's okay. Because I see these arguments being shared on Twitter. The first one is accessibility. It's this word that a bunch of people throw around, and they say things like 3D Touch is terrible for accessibility, and Apple should remove it because it's not easy to use. And my problem with this statement is that there's different types of accessibility and different types of inclusive design. And so while you could make the argument that from a motor skill perspective, 3D Touch is not accessible, on the other hand, I also think it's true that people with vision impediments, for example, that really don't like the fact that to get to some piece of information, you need to navigate into multiple screens deep into an app and its navigation stack. 3D Touch as a shortcut to preview content could be an accessibility feature in that you're saving taps, you're saving time, and you can see, you can get to your information more quickly. So the accessibility argument doesn't really hold true because of the different shades of what inclusive design on iOS means. The second argument that I could see why 3D Touch may be going away. So as you can tell, I'm a little torn on this topic. The fact that it's still not available on the iPad should be maybe, I don't know, a warning sign. But the iPad has its unique set of challenges when it comes to implementing 3D Touch. It's a big display, so if you press hard on the display, of course, maybe it'll bend, or maybe you're using your iPad on a desk with a smart keyboard or a smart cover propped up, and if you press on the screen, the iPad will just fall on the desk. You just push it over the angle of the cover. So that's a problem. But then you look at Apple and you see, Apple, for example, replicating some 3D Touch features on the iPad with a standard long press. So things like clearing notifications all at once in iOS 12, you can do that with a long press, or the Files widget in iOS 11 that you get on the home screen by long pressing on the Files icon. That doesn't require 3D Touch at all. Or also in iOS 12, stuff like notification previews. You just need to long press. I also think 11 actually. You just need to long press on a notification and it pops open without having to use pick and pop.
One of the ones that I find the funniest is like on the iPad, in Control Center, why can I not just tap the home icon?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
Like, why do I have to long press it? Like, what am I doing that
But
for?
that's another good example. Control Center, you can expand with a long press. So the folks are saying 3D Touch is going away because it's useless. Just look at the long press gesture. That argument also kind of makes sense. So my main problem, as Steven mentioned, is the fact that you introduce this new technology and you get developers, you get traction among the developer community to implement 3D Touch. And it's not a technology that is considered legacy at this point. I mean, it was introduced 4 years ago. It's not like the headphone jack or, stuff that was introduced, I don't know, in iOS 3 or iOS 4. It's a relatively new feature. And I agree, it's not totally discoverable, but just nixing 3D Touch without giving it a second chance, I don't think it's the right answer, especially after you've made such a big deal out of the the display technology that you needed to implement and all these sensors and all the you build as a company you build the Taptic engine to provide haptic feedback and work alongside 3D touch. So you make a big deal out of this new feature, and then suddenly it just disappears. While there are plenty of arguments that would justify that, I also think it would be weird. Because it would smell like a failure in modern Apple history. Not a huge failure because it's just a feature of the iPhone, but still something that was introduced, made a big splash, and just removed 4 years later, 3 years later. I don't think it's a good look.
There's precedent for them changing the way that it works, right? Like at watchOS, where 3D Touch has been downplayed. It's still there. But I think watchOS in its early days really struggled with it
was the discoverability problem. There was too much hidden behind what was called force press then.
And so they sort of, okay, you don't have to force press or 3D touch to do everything. Now you can swipe or do these other things. And maybe that's where it goes on iOS. But I think we're in agreement that it's not going away, that this is like an over-reading of the situation by this analyst.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the key things is there's still stuff being put behind 3D Touch in iOS 12, right? I don't think that you would continue to use 3D Touch as heavily as it's used in iOS in certain places, even in Apple's own apps, if they were removing not just the hardware, but the actual feature itself. It just doesn't seem realistic.
Yeah. So I guess we're saying it's here to stay. At least for now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In some way, right? There may be a change, and there probably will be a change, but it's still going to exist. It's still going to be what we know now, but maybe done in a different way. Maybe they don't need to use. Maybe they're just going to do it all in software, right? That they can work out when you're pushing your finger down into the screen more. There is no plate that is recognizing presses or anything. We don't know, but I believe that the next iPhones, I think we all believe the next iPhones will have 3D touch in them the way that they always have. The taptic mode will be there, and it will press on you when you do something. It's still going to exist.
So let me ask you a final question. When you think of analyst firms, do you think they're like the Wolf of Wall Street? Tons of, questionable substances and parties, and these people just having the best time of their life. And
this is not a thing that I would be willing to comment on one way or another.
Because I sometimes think about it, and I like to imagine it's like that, And in their spare time, they make iPhone predictions.
I worked in a very big company, right?
Don't ruin it for me.
Be very similar to a lot of these firms, especially the Barclays firm, right? I think it's a lot more boring than you think it is.
That's too bad.
I'm sorry to say.
All right. Well, that's fine. Good for them.
All right, Stephen, take us home.
All right, so thank you for listening to this episode of Connected. If you want to find links to stuff we talked about, they're in your podcast app or on the website relay.fm/connected/207. You can get in touch with us there via email, or of course you can do so on Twitter. Myke is IMYKE, and Myke is the host of a bunch of shows at relay.fm/shows. You can find Federico on Twitter as Viticci, VITICCI, and he is the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net. You can find me as ISMH, and I write 512pixels.net. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Casper, Pingdom, and Green Chef. And thank you for listening, and until our next episode, guys, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Goodbye.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Why?
No, sorry.
No, you just gotta leave it as is.
Sorry.
Well, there you go.
Oh, dear.
Adios.
Why?